let's keep them. Say what? Ah.
Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is the Broken Meeple, a show where I devote my time to rant and raving about board games, but it's usually more the ranting part. Maybe not so much with this list though. This is something I fancy doing for a bit of a change, because I don't think I've seen this list done by many other creators. Typically, you know, the list is, oh, games I've gotten bored with now, or I've cooled off on them and that, and yeah, there may still be grounds to do that list later, although I can't remember when the last time I did the list, so I have to see if it's going to be updatable or not. But I don't see many people talk about the ones that improved over time. Occasionally I see it, but it's less common. And certainly for me, it's less common. Trust me, when I tried to come up with this list, I could only think of 10 games. Like, literally 10. If you put a gun to my head, I might be able to get to 12. But most games do not just suddenly get good for me.
Demand suddenly skyrocketed. You all saw it.
And it's not like I'm saying that these games are like the most fantastic games ever now. You know, I mean, there are a few in here that are like, oh yeah, I know, these are pretty good now. But, you know, for these ones, it's just a case that before I either didn't like them or found them kind of meh. And now I'm like, yeah, I'll play them. I'm fine, you know, the heart has warmed to them, and therefore I'm willing to give them a try. So let's just get on with it. 10 games for me.
Yes, get on with it!
For number 10, this is probably the smallest gap between the two. I mean, I liked it fine when it came out, but I still haven't even played a lot of the expansion content of this, frankly, but I have a desire to, so that is part of the improvement. But I think just, you know, where I found it a kind of bit at first, I've played it more. I've played it with its speed variant, because I know originally I hadn't played it with that, and it's like, oh, actually the speed variant is now the only way I'll play this game. But I think originally I played it with too many players, and I realized that actually this is a game I really want to play with 2 to 3 players, and, you know, 3 players ideally. I'll settle for 4. I think I originally only played it with 4 or 5, and it's like 5 is garbage for this game. But, you know, it's a small jump. But I'm now a little bit more willing to play. Oop! I just conveniently have it on the shelf within arm's reach. Space Base. Yeah, it didn't hit me as much to begin with. You know, it was kind of like, meh, I'm fine with it, but I don't see the, you know, the big appeal to it. And still, I do think it has player scaling issues. I mean, you know, I say 2 to 3 players, but if you play it with 2 players, you have no reason to really go for the red abilities, because you're going to be rolling the dice all the time. But then with 3 players, it seems to be a good sweet spot for all the abilities. But the more players you add, the less I care about the abilities that I trigger. You know, in a 5-player game, I'm not collecting cards so that I can have a good blue ability. I'm just going to try and spam as many ships as I can so that I can get all the red abilities, because the die is going to be rolled 4 times versus my 1 time that I roll it. So why would I bother going for the blue abilities? And not to mention, it takes forever for the game to finish with 5 players. It's ridiculous, even with the light speed variant. So, you know, it still has some issues. And I've got the command box here, because I think I don't know which expansion I stopped at. It was one of the smaller ones. And I have still not really played with a lot of these expansion elements. You know, some of these just feel like they're too fiddly, too overcomplicated for playing with casual players on a game night. So, you know, I still have some issues with the game, and so I do actually need to decide whether this really needs to stay in the collection or not. I think that is literally going to be a case of, let me play it with the expansion content, see if it's any good, and if it's not, I'm just going to sell it off, because every game cafe I know has a copy of Space Base there. Just play the base game. So, yeah, this one is maybe in danger of being cold at some point, but when people at a game night say, I fancy a little bit of Space Base, and there's like 3 or 4 of us, I'm like, yeah, you know what, cool. I'll have a bit of a laugh chucking dice and collecting cool spaceships, and everybody's quite chatty as we play it. It's just like, I've appreciated it a bit more, and I can see why people enjoy it. Maybe not quite to the levels of 9, 10 out of 10 levels. I think that maybe, I don't know, there's a few too many problems with this, and you have to play with Lightspeed variant or I ain't touching this game. And it's a bit like Prelude expansion, for example, for Terraforming Mars. That's you know, another example where you need that expansion to speed that game up. But yeah, it does the job fine. I just need to do a bit more research with this one. Number 9, again, wasn't a huge gap between the kind of meh and now I actually quite like it in the sense that it's in my collection, but I don't often get it to the table. It's typically one that, you know, a friend of mine brings to the table and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, I want to play it. Especially when it's a Euro game that can go up to 6 players. And it's like, okay, many Euro games don't work with that player count. And even though this one does kind of work with 5 or 6 players, it's not a player count I like to play it at because you have too much information to look at from other players and it's too overwhelming. I much prefer to play this with 3 or 4, but just because, again, it's not too far off, let's go fetch it. Here we go. This is Richard Breese's Keyflower, so this is pretty much the only key game I like. He's done like many key games and I've played a bunch of them and they're okay at best. But most of the time they end up being too faffy. I mean, there was one that I really thought could have been really sweet. It's the one where you had the sort of kind of like fold up, I forget what it was called, key dragon or key something, but basically you had like the foldy board. So every time you did something with these resources and that, you actually had to sort of do those old little kids things where you're sort of like, I think you must die, you know, type things in the playground. And basically it constantly changed itself and that looked cool, but my god was it fiddly, over convoluted and too much faff. Keyflower is my favourite of the lot, where you've got the little sort of pseudo-auction mechanic where you put the meeples around the tiles to bid on grabbing that tile, and you create your own little cool village in front of you with, like, you know, logistic transports and sheep and animals and stuff like that, especially when you throw any expansions. And I think the main reason that this game got a bit better for me was because I really do actually enjoy the whole building your own little mini village. I mean, the auction bit with the tiles is like, okay, fine, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but the building of your little village, I just get a kick out of doing that. So that bit always works for me, especially when you throw in the animals and stuff like that. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm building my own little farm. This is really nice. But I do like to cap the player count at 4. 5 and 6, I know it works, but it's a lot of people making decisions, and a lot of what you decide on is going to depend on what other players have got. Because you're going to constantly be looking at, you know, think, well, will they take that tile? Will they take that bridge? I mean, is this the sort of thing you're going for? Which means I have to look at everybody else's village, which is very difficult to do when you got 5 or 6 of the buggers, you know, at different ends of the table, and you're having to constantly squint to see what's what. It's like it's way too much information on the table. But 3 to 4 makes a nice little sweet spot with this one. But again, you know, do I actually want to keep this one? Because when it gets played, somebody else tends to play it, and I don't know how often I'm going to play it, but I've got, you know, a cheap wooden insert for it, and it's, you know, fairly nicely organised. So, I don't know, maybe I might have to try and bring this one out to the table at some point. You know, 3-4 players, bring it out to the table with some new players and see if I can get, like, a revised kick out of it. I mean, maybe that's kind of an advantage of doing this top 10, actually. I'm almost a little bit of self-therapy with some of my games. But, yeah, Keyflower is the one that, yeah, a little bit meh, and, like, I'm not that fussed. But now, with the right people and the right player count, this one I actually do enjoy.
Sometimes I don't believe I know you.
My number 8 is a massive negotiation game, and normally I like negotiation games, but this one is a little bit obscene in how big and convoluted and crazy it gets. You know, I mean, most of my negotiation games are generally sort of more simplistic ones, and I mean, I've got New Angeles up there, which is probably one of my more involved ones. You know, a good 2.5 or 3 hour game to play New Angeles, but at least the concept of what you're negotiating for is relatively straightforward to follow. It's like, yeah, this is the asset card, this is the corporation who wants it, should we let them have it, there's a, you know, is the city going to pack in if we do this? You know, as much as there's a long longevity to the game, you still kind of can see easily what it is you're bidding on and the value of everything. Sidereal Confluence, I think is the full name of it, that's a different story. This is a mind bender of a negotiation game, because you are basically just an alien with cubes of different colors, and you trade cubes for cubes. That is literally the game.
A cookie!
No, it's not a cookie!
Not the cookie.
Forget whatever theme this thing tries to paste on. It is literally a cube trading game. And yeah, wasn't the biggest fan at first, and it was a bit like, oh my god, there's a lot you got to contend with. But slowly but surely, you know, again, a relatively small gap. I do enjoy this game, but again, I gotta be very specific with how I play it. I don't want more than 4, maybe 5 players. I think 5 players is as many as I want to play this with. And even then, it depends on what factions get used. Because my friend basically has this game, and the main way I get this played is when he brings it. He brings it to a convention night, and we play it. and we've played some like 4 or 5 player games, and that's been cool. On those occasions, we can experiment a little bit with the more janky factions, particularly from the expansion. But we have had times where he's taken it to a convention and I've been roped into a game with 9, 10 plus players, and it's too much. You can't negotiate with that many people for cube transactions. Your mind will melt, and trying to figure out what the value of anything is. Like, I'm going to give you this and this for this and this. And it's like, well, what's the value of X and the value of Y? It's really hard to kind of tell them apart. And so when you throw in all the janky factions and too many players, it just becomes ridiculous.
I can't do this, Sam.
I must admit, this one I'm actually cooling off. I mean, I sort of was like, meh. Then I warmed up to it. Now I'm slightly cooling off it a little bit more. Like, I think it's more solidifying itself in a position where I'm like, I will play it, but you gotta cap the player count. If he brings it to a convention and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get like 8, 9 people into this game, I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'll pass. I just want 4 or 5 people that are easy enough to negotiate with, closed room, not a big convention noisy area, and the game works out quite fine for me. But that is a very specific situation. It's mainly the fact that the factions do play out so differently.
Crab people, crab people.
That sort of brings me back to this, because it is basically just cubes trading cubes. And certainly, again, I think it's also warmed up for me a bit because I play it with a certain group of people every time who are all friends. This is not a game I would jump into with randoms. No way. The game would just fall apart at that point. So, yeah, it's a little bit hit and miss. Maybe this probably should have been my 10 as opposed to my 8. But, these bottom 3 are definitely small jumps from how I thought before to how I think of them now.
Well, that went okay.
Number 7 is a fair bit of a jump, actually, and some of this is down to definitely, I think, having to play this with friends for the most part, but also I think I've just got a bit more of an appreciation for the card game itself. It's a fairly old game, it's regarded as a classic among some people, but there's definitely a nuance to playing it well, and I do feel like it's a little bit one note in certain strategies. Like, it really does like you to do the whole shipping action for victory points in this. But I wasn't a huge fan of Race for the Galaxy to begin with. Now, with some friends, I'm happy enough to play it. I don't necessarily love it to bits, it's decent enough, but I'm happy enough to play it, because it's quick. We can play it in a relatively short space of time, and I can have some fun with the card combinations and trying to do some cool, and the drafting phase, the drafting with the phases that go off and around. I do like that aspect quite a lot. It's definitely my favorite aspect, but the main thing that is a bit of a pain is the fact that this one does have a bit of a steep learning curve. You've got to learn a smorgasbord of sort of iconography and rules to begin with. But also, you've got this problem that, the shipping action just feels like the most powerful way to win the game. Shipping for victory points. And it's like, oh, come on, can't I win just by getting cool cards in front of me? But also, if you play this with people who know what they're doing with the game, they're just going to own you. Like, I mean, I play this game with a few friends every now and again, knowing I'm probably going to come 3rd or 4th, out of the 4 of us. It's just like, and even then, I'm playing it with 4 of us purely because we are, we're friends and we're playing it that way. Honestly, the main time I've warmed up to Race for the Galaxy is playing it as a 2-player. I think 2-player is the best way, because the problem is that the whole drafting of the phases is a bit of a kind of, it's too much in a 4-player game, because chances are the phases that you want are going to happen, or majority of them are going to happen, because there's 4 of you picking them. But when you've got 2 of you, it's a much more tighter decision to think, well, I want to do the result of what the occupied planet phase or whatever, I forget their names, and and I'm like, well, I wouldn't say no to developing, I wouldn't say no to trading either. Do I think the opponent's going to pick develop? Or trade? I don't know. I think they might be doing shipping this round. Well, if that's the case, then which one should I do first? And it's so much tighter and so much better, I think, as a 2-player game. Problem is, I don't get this played 2-player often. It tends to be 4-player. But even then, with the right people, I have warmed up to Race for the Galaxy a bit more, because originally I did kind of dislike it. I thought, like, not a fan of this one. It can go away. I don't really care. Now I'm like, if somebody wants to play it and it's just a base set without all the weird expansion stuff thrown in, and it's like, yeah, okay, why not? Let's give it a shot.
Overall, I would rate it a C+. Okay? Not great.
My number 6 is pretty much a dictionary definition of a Euro that I shouldn't normally like. And yet this one I have warmed up to the point where I do have a copy on my shelf and do like this one. It's a Euro game about 19th century industry and infrastructure. And yeah, how many games do this? And how many times do I hate them? Brass. But you know, there's a lot of these games out. And I don't like this theme, and I don't particularly go mad for it. But I played this game and I thought, it's fine. I mean, give me a chance to get into it maybe a bit more. I think it's okay. I don't think it's amazing or anything. Now I actually think the game's pretty solid. Anno 1800. And this is probably going to shock a few people that I actually do like this game. And yeah, I do actually quite enjoy it. This whole forward planning thing of deciding, right, well, I'm gonna build these things for now, you know, we'll just get some basic wood and bricks and stuff, and then we'll make we'll learn how to make coffee and basic loom and, you know, a couple and tin cans or whatever, and then eventually I need to think, well, how on earth am I gonna make the bike? How am I gonna make this, like, you know, train set later? And it's like, oh, I don't know. Well, I'm gonna need this and this. Well, how do I get that? Well, I need to get these three things and turn them into this. And this whole thing is actually quite cool. It basically functions like one giant tech tree in a sense. And I like tech tree style games, you know, with some exceptions. I thought Beyond the Sun was a bit too faffy, but you know, this kind of techie tree style I think works quite nicely, and it's probably the more interesting side of this whole 19th century industry thing, because most of these other games that use this theme do the whole boring thing with it. But I think the main thing that, like, you know, I gravitate to with this is the card system. The card system where these are like the little mini objectives you're trying to go for, and every time you play them, you know, you can get some cool bonus for them, but it's also the game timer. Somebody runs out of cards, the game ends. But everybody's drawing cards almost at the same rate as they're playing them, so it's hard to get into this system where you're trying to, like, you know, complete these cards rather than draw new ones. And, you know, there's a few little bits like that that kind of make me go, well, this is actually quite a fun Euro. And the rules are fairly simple. They're not the most complex rules in the world. Once you get the hang of how the whole workers system works with the different color workers and that, everything else is mainly just the mind-bendingness of trying to plan ahead for what it is you need to do. And so the game goes at a relatively good pace. You know, it's not the fastest game ever, but it's also not the longest game ever. It takes about as long as it needs to and gets it right. So, you know, at first, kind of like, meh, not too fussed. But then after a while, I started hunting down a very cheap copy. I think I found like a 10-15 quid copy on the Brin and Buy sale, and, you know, with some laminated player sheets in there, and it's just like, yeah, that'll do. I think there's an expansion to it. I've never played it. Don't know if I'd like it or not. But base game alone, I'm like, yeah, for the time being, I'll hang on to it. It's not often that a game with this theme is one that I gravitate towards, and this one just managed to do it.
Crazy gibberish.
For my number 5, yeah, this one was a bit of a, shall we say, a little bit of a jump. Or, you know, I mean, I don't love it, but I do quite like it now. And originally I certainly was like, no, not a fan of this one. This is way too chaotic, way too insane. But then I kind of got more used to how the mechanic works, and also accepted that maybe I just don't want to play this game with 4 players. You know, I'm happy to play it with 2 to 3. Even solo is not bad. This is the predecessor to the Black Forest game that I really love, Glass Road. Glass Road definitely did not work for me at first. Playing it with 4 players and thinking this game is way too chaotic and way too AP inducing. And it's not exactly changed from that. I mean, it is definitely AP inducing like you wouldn't believe when you've got all these different characters and you've got to select a bunch from them. I mean, that takes forever. But also just the idea that 4 of you are putting like characters down and you're just hoping to God that yours don't clash with somebody else's. You know, there's too many characters for you to guess that somebody is going to pick something else, and it's just, when you add more players, it just adds more chaos. So I admit, I like the game more now because I'm more accepting of that mechanic. You know, I know it going in. Plus, I do love the whole building up my little settlement with little buildings and stuff like that. It's still fun. You know, I do like this Uwe Rosenberg style of building up your own little settlement with farm buildings and things like that. But yeah, this one I warmed up to mainly because I like playing it as a 2 to 3 player game especially. I think at those counts, the game kind of sings nicely. 4 is easily, I think, the weaker side of how much I want to do, but it did take a little while for me to warm up to it a bit more. I remember playing a few games of it, not being a fan, then it got re-released, I think, you know, it got reprinted, and I thought, well, it's not that expensive, you know what, let's just give it a try, give it another chance, because some of it I like, and I want to see if it's if time, time can be a healer in this case, and certainly for one or two games on this list, I think that's actually a big contender. Like, time has passed, tastes have changed, my interest in games has changed. But Glass Road is now on my shelf. I prefer Black Forest. I think Black Forest is a superior game, but they're different enough. Black Forest does not use the same card mechanic as Glass Road does. It just has those cool resource dials, and I think that's another thing that brought me back. Even though I disliked the chaotic nature of Glass Road at first, I was like, well, I like building up my settlement, and those resource wheels are fantastic. I love those in the game. So I was willing to give it another chance and just see, look, can I just warm up a bit to the other mechanic? And I have. This is a game I actually do genuinely like. I'm just not as keen to play it with 4 as I am with less.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
My number 4 actually started off probably the highest out of a bunch of these games, like, in sense of, oh, do I actually like the game or not? I did actually genuinely like this one, but it was a lot to deal with. It was a lot to manipulate on the board. Even though it's only mainly meant to be played as a 2-player game, playing it with more than 2 was just ridiculous. It just took too long. And another game I've got in the other room called Nations technically replaced this one. But Through the Ages has definitely jumped up for me. And pretty much the sole reason I've warmed up to this game is the app. I have not played this game in its physical form in years. In fact, even though I see it cheap on bring and buys and cheap on sales every now and again, I can't bring myself to want to pay for Through the Ages physical copy because the app from Czech Game Editions is just too friggin' damn good.
And I'm the bad guy?
It is such a good app. And I'm not a great player at Through the Ages. I'm pretty certain that if somebody watched me play it, I would just get my butt handed to me either by the computer or by the players telling me that what I'm doing is garbage. I'm pretty sure I'm a noob at this game. But it's done well for me using the app because, in an hour and a half, I played through a 3-4 player game of Through the Ages with AI, and it's great on some plane journeys I've been on, when I've had to go to Iceland or a couple of European countries or even Ireland before, because we take off, get over the ears popping bit, then fire up Through the Ages. Alright, game's about to finish. You're about to land. Whoa, what? It's like by the time the hour and a half has passed or whatever, I've already I'm just about finishing the game. I finished it, and now I'm like, oh, well, that time flew past on the flight. And that's one good thing it does. I can play a big, long, involved game, and by the time I'm done, the journey's done, and I've enjoyed my time with it. The challenges that you get on it, like beat the AIs on certain difficulties or with certain twists, I like those, but I think they're too hard. And that is one problem I think Through the Ages does have. I think the AI on this game is just a bit too hard when you put it on the mid-higher difficulties. And sometimes you're not entirely certain if it's beating you because the game is just giving them all the good stuff early. But, it's hard to tell. And as I say, I'm not the greatest player at the game. But it is really solid. It's got a fantastic tutorial. Its interface is pretty clear to use. 1 or 2 little bits take some getting used to. But it handles all the admin to do with the, the scrapped, I forget what it is, when you have the corrupted resources, when you hog too many goods, and if you hog too many of them, they go bad or something. I forget the name of the mechanic, but, that aspect is a nightmare to deal with in the physical form with all the different cubes, because you got to remember, hang on, have I done this right? Can I do this? Can I actually build this, or am I lacking a population or whatever? The app handles that for you, and for that reason, this one easily shot up for me in terms of my enjoyment, because now I can play what I have to admit is a pretty damn good game much easier. So easily warmed up to this one. Number three. I gave this game a bit of respect, but I was just kind of like, it's so... It's decent-ish. I don't know. I said it was above average. Maybe it should have been closer to average. But now I actually do think this is a really solid game that I do enjoy playing. Albeit with less players. I don't like playing it with the maximum player count. I think playing it with less is fine. And there is I can't remember if it was official or unofficial, the solo mode for this game. I can actually get a decent kick out of playing as well. But originally, Forest Shuffle didn't work for me. And a lot of that was because of, playing it with too many players just seemed kind of pointless, but the game had some major balance issues, and I mean major balance issues. Some of the paths to victory from all the different animals and stuff that you could get on the cards were fundamentally better than others, and you cannot deny this. Even the fanboys of this game cannot deny that the original game had balance issues. I have now, as you can see from some of the videos I've done reviews for both of these, played and got all the expansions for this game. I can't remember if there's 2 or 3 now, but basically all those little mini expansions are now in my copy of Forest Shuffle. In fact, yes, it's actually over here. So, this one is now one that I can actually play and enjoy, because the expansions go a long way to balancing those things out. I mean, you really do need to shove in Woodland Edge and Forest Alpine, or whatever it is, and get those in your copy, because they really do improve the game. And I'm actually interested to see what the Dartmoor expansion or whatever is going to include, especially as I'm familiar with Dartmoor as from the West Country, so I'm certainly interested to see what that little expansion will include. Or is Dartmoor a spin-off? I can't remember. I think we're getting a mini expansion to this and then a spin-off Forest Shuffle, so it's kind of confusing. But, this one has now shot up for me into a game I really enjoy. And another aspect is also the fact that you now have an app for scoring. It's not foolproof. It sometimes needs a little bit of help, and actually you cannot sleeve this game if you want to use the scoring app, because it just constantly makes mistakes as a result. But scoring took forever in this game, another thing that put me off it before. But if I use the app, play with fewer players, and use both of these mini expansions, I now really enjoy Forest Shuffle. I'm less keen to play it in its base set form when it's just on a library or anything. But, I can put this easily in a box. It's a relatively small amount of space it will take. But, with the extra bits in it, I'm like, this is a good game and I can enjoy it again. But at first, the long-winded scoring and the balance issues were just like, look, I can give respect to other aspects of this game, but those things just kill it for me. Well, now, those bits have been alleviated.
What do you say we plead insanity?
Number 2. I mean, number 2 and 1 could kind of switch places maybe, but the thing is, with this one, I have to kind of consider the fact that there's more than one version of this game in existence. Originally there was just the one, and when I played it, I hated it. I hated its guts in its first edition form. And, lots of time passed. I even tried it multiple times, and I just thought, don't like it, too punishing, too much luck involved, pretty much one path to victory. I was just not that great, with the original version of the game. Then it spawned 2 more versions as well as a second edition. And it's like, well, I'll give it a try at some point, and, we'll see how it goes. My friends showed me New Zealand. And then Great Western Trail instantly became a game I warmed up to again, after so much time hating on it. Now, that being said, the reason this probably doesn't fit as my number 1 is because it's mainly because of a spin-off that I've warmed up to this one. I love Great Western Trail New Zealand. New Zealand just gets it right. It gives me pretty much the fundamentals of Great Western Trail, but it gives me more characters to use, all of which have suitable paths to victory. I have won the game using any of those 4 characters, the shearer, the builder, the sailor, and the cowboys, in equal form, focusing on them. And I've even managed to win the game diversifying and doing stuff with the hazard tiles and, the objectives. There are ways that I can win this game, trying out different strategies, and it feels like they're balanced, or at least a damn sight more balanced than in the other game. And I think sheep are just more interesting than cows. But bonus tiles as well, always a good thing. New Zealand just threw in a lot of cool stuff that I really liked. Now, that being said, I want to try Argentina. I've heard mixed reviews about it, but I would still like to try it, just to complete the set and say I've done them all. And certainly I wasn't the biggest fan of El Paso, which is still sitting there telling me, when are you going to sell me? At some point it will happen. But the original Great Western Trail, I have also warmed up to that one a little bit, but in its second edition form. I've played it base and I've played it with its expansion. I do think I've warmed up to it more because of the expansion, Rails to the North, when you throw it in. The only problem with Rails to the North is that it kind of pigeonholes you into doing the Rails to the North aspects as your strategy, because if you don't, you're missing out on a lot of potential points. And certainly the first time I tried the expansion, I focused pretty much my entire game on the Rails to the North stuff, building all my little huts, and absolutely decimated the other players on my first go. So, I still have some issues perhaps with the first base set, and the base set is definitely still too long. New Zealand is a long game as well, but the base set still takes as long as the New Zealand one, and yet there doesn't feel like there's as much you can do in that one. That one just feels like you're spinning your wheels a little bit too much. But given that I absolutely hated it in its first edition form, the fact that not only am I willing to play some of the other Great Western Trails, I mean, I tried El Paso, I actually at least gave this one a try. I wouldn't have even touched it with a barge ball otherwise. But yeah, check out my review for that one as to why this one doesn't quite make the cut. But, well, it makes the cut, but in a slightly more negative way. But the thing with this is that New Zealand one just works. I pimped it up, I've got an insert. It is easily the one that I enjoy playing, and it shocks people I know, and it shocks me, but that's why this has got to be at least in my number 2 or number 1 spot, because, I hated it, and now I have really warmed up to it. Yeah, pigs may still fly.
You got a problem with cartoons?
Finally, for my number 1, yeah, like I say, 1 and 2 can kind of switch, but this one I actually do enjoy playing now. I give the game a little bit more respect, but again, it is dependent on player count, means of playing it, and expansions used. And this is probably why this one goes up a little bit more than the Great Western Trail did, because this isn't spin-offs making me like this. This is still the original game. It's just with certain expansions, I can actually go, yeah, this is enjoyable. 3 of us, me and 2 other mates, we play the Steam app version, which granted is not the best app in the world by far, but it allows us to play it online and get it done in a quicker time frame, even though again, it could still stand to be shorter. But this one, once you throw in Prelude, then the game improves massively. Terraforming Mars, yes, I mentioned it earlier, didn't want to give away that it was further up the list, but yeah, Terraforming Mars, I really didn't like it first either. I mean, I played it with like 4 players, base set only, and I'm like, oh my god, this game takes freaking forever for what is basically just slightly more advanced 7 Wonders. Come on! Ay, 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 and this map is not interesting. I mean, yay, I put a city down, you put a tree next to it, whatever. It's like, half of this map doesn't even get used. What's the point in making it so big? It's like, and there was just a lot of stuff I wasn't a fan of, and the game takes forever to play in its base set only form. And even to this day, I still won't play it in its base set form. But Prelude really made a difference, giving you asymmetric starting setups, giving you a boost to your economy so that it shaves off a good 15-20 minutes of the game, probably closer to 15, probably closer to 10-15 minutes actually, but yeah, about a quarter of an hour of the game shaved off because of that starting setup. Instant must-have expansion. But then Venus, Venus just basically adds more variety. You don't have to do the Venus stuff, you can just leave it be, but it's more cards and no extra complexity really. So, when me and my mates play it, we play the Steam app version, which allows me to play with Prelude and Venus, because I don't think the Steam app has colonies, and even then, I'm a little bit hoo-ha on colonies. I mean, colonies is fine, but it's a lot of extra rules, it's more faff and setup, and it just makes power, the resource, too overpowered. Not to put a pun on it, because once you've got a lot of power, not only are you generating so much heat that you can get all the points that way, but you're also able to fly to all the colonies and do stuff there. So it unbalanced the system a bit. Not to mention adding colonies then also got rid of the time element that you saved with Prelude. So it undid a lot of the goodwill I got from Prelude. So that one I'm not that big as keen on, but I'll play it with it if I must. But I found that when a physical copy turns up with just Prelude, I am more than happy to play it at that point. But when I play it with friends online, and again, I think part of this warming up to it is because of the app, we do enjoy playing a 3-player game, which is definitely the sweet spot for player count, I think, for this game. 4 is probably too much. And, I mean, people who play this with 5, I think, are nuts.
5 is right out.
Prelude and Venus, there's enough card variety and enough, sort of time shaved off the game that I can go, yeah, you know what, this is fun. I still don't think it's the, most amazing game ever. I still think it's overrated, but, I'm like, yeah, cool. Especially if somebody has brought their pimped up copy, although, cool blimey, I mean, the amount of money people spend on this game, and then don't complain that the components were rubbish. Seriously? But, Colonies just wasn't for me, and Turmoil, oh god, I've tried that expansion. Turmoil sucks. It is a must-avoid expansion, do not get that. But yeah, Prelude 2, Venus, and Terraforming Mars. And I'll actually have a good time playing it with 3 players who don't have AP problems. Compared to before, though, where I was like, why do people like this game? This is shockingly bad. I mean, when did it come out? Same sort of time as games like Siphon, I think, or something like that. And I was playing Siphon, a couple of others, going, oh yeah, I really enjoy these ones, but people get banging on about Terraforming Mars. And I'm like, why? It's so overrated. Just play Seven Wonders. It'll be quicker, faster, and probably give you more decision space. It just, you know, there were problems I had with it. But nowadays, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Cool. Give me 3 players max. Give me these expansions, and I will gladly sit down and enjoy a good game of Terraforming Mars. And it's quite a leap. So, you know, not so much a spin-off that's made me go, oh, this is great. It's more that time has passed, and some expansions have fixed some of the problems I had with the base game, which is what expansions should be doing. You know, add more variety, fix problems, and you're good. They don't need to, you know, add so much extra complexity. Like Colonies, I think, just is a little bit too much, and Turmoil just goes one step, well, Turmoil still goes about 10 steps way too far. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I have warmed up to it more than I used to. It's still overrated, but I still enjoy it now when I play it.
I beg to differ, sir.
There you are, 10 games that I have warmed up to as time has gone by, from different degrees, but yeah, no pun intended again. But yeah, it was difficult to come up with a short list for this. I mean, I maybe could think of 1 or 2 more, but as I look around my collection, it's tricky because a lot of these games that I've got here, I liked originally. I mean, I consider the Agricola, but problem is, Agricola, I think I'm kind of the same as I was before on, because I gave it a little bit of respect because I love the Uri Rosenberg farming stuff, and it was one of the first ones to do it, and I like the occupation cards, but the occupation cards, ridiculously ridiculously unbalanced. The fact that it's so tight and so punishing, like if you don't get like 1 carrot, you lose 100 points and stuff. It's like, what, stupid? I'm exaggerating, but you know, still, it's like, you know, if you don't get something of everything, you lose the game basically. So you can't specialize, but also the fact that it absolutely mandatory requires you to get kids. Like, if you don't get kids and extra workers, you will lose the game outright. It is physically impossible to win. So what do? They make you only get kids on 1 single space. And it's mostly impossible to try and get onto that space at the right time. Yeah, well done, game design. Now, I know Caverna has a similar thing with the kids space, although eventually it does get easier, but I have 1 Caverna without having to get loads of kids. I mean, you can have up to 6, you know, dwarfs or whatever going around in there, or typically a max will be 5. I have won the game with 2 or 3 before. You know, it is doable, depending on what you're doing. So, you know, it's handy in that, but I don't find it mandatory compared to Agricola. But otherwise, I mean, Star Wars Outer Rim, I mean, I enjoyed that first to begin with. I now just love it. So, it, you know, it wasn't necessarily warmed up to it. It just heated up more in the oven, I guess. But I look around and I look at these games and they're on my shelf because I like them to begin with. So it's not like I can go, oh yeah, I warmed up to these ones specifically. It's like, nah, all of these I've liked. I mean, maybe Lisboa? Lisboa I did like sort of originally, and now I like it a little bit more, but it's still my 4th favourite out of the Lacerdas, so these 3 still beat it by a country mile. So maybe that's the case, but yeah, all of these were ones that I just genuinely liked beforehand, and if anything, some of these may be ones that I've cooled off on. You know, Feast of Odin, I've definitely cooled off on that one since its original day, favouring things like Fields of Isle much more than it. So, you know, there are more occasions with that, but trying to think of games that started off meh or bad, and then I started enjoying, it was hard to think of this list, and I'd be interested to know in the comments what your games are. You know, which games did you not like or find kind of meh before, and if now you've warmed up to, why did you warm up to them? Was it just time passing, expansions, spin-offs, the people you played with, technological advances, the app, for example, like my Through the Ages one, and even Terraforming Mars to that extent? Be interested to know your thoughts. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and consider subscribing to the channel. More subs, more engagement. It keeps the algorithm going and helps to keep this channel flowing. Much like my Patreon, if you want to join that, even at a low setting, perfectly fine, because every little bit goes to paying all the fees and subscriptions and equipment costs and Adobe Premiere Pro fees and God knows what else, which is all expensive. This is not my day job, remember, but the Patreons help to keep this channel going nicely, so thank you very much to them. By all means, let me know your comments below about the games that you think should have gone on this list and which ones you think, well, I don't know, can you disagree with the ones on my list? I suppose the negatives I've said, let me know your thoughts either way, but always keep it civil. So take care, and remember, regardless if it was just a case of leaving it in the oven for a little bit longer, it's still only a game, so hopefully you enjoyed it at the end. Bye for now.